how have the companies who have produced vaccines continued to profit in light of the recent clip that we just watched?
Yes, I think it's we need to note the fact that in general, a lot of the physicians around the country that actually do immunizations in their offices, they get their vaccinations from either state or city organizations. And so there's this ideology that there's not a lot of money in the vaccination part of pharmaceutical companies. But I think what we have seen with the reports is that the stock market numbers, as far as especially the ones that we've been hearing about, Pfizer, Moderna, biotech, these companies, their stock market prices have soared. And so that's one aspect that the pharmaceutical companies have made plenty of money, but also the hidden understanding is that there were big chunks of money given to these companies when they were producing these vaccines from different governments from around the world. And so, there's not really this idea that because you have all of these free vaccine sites in America, and there's some in other parts of the world, people have an idea that, okay, since it's free, there's not a lot of money being made, but that's just not accurate information. There has been a lot of money that has been exchanged from governments to these companies. And, one of the great questions that you have asked me previous was, if things start to go south, is it possible that they would stop these vaccines because of the problems that they're causing? We're talking about billions of dollars, and also 9 new billionaires being produced from these actual vaccine companies.
Yeah.
It's very unlikely that people are going to stop, halt, or even slow down vaccinations because of how much money they are producing.
And what estimates are there for medical expenditures during this pandemic?
Yeah, there's not a lot of information. I think that's very exact because there's so many speculations and there's so much information that are saying it's hard for them to actually calculate. But the information that I did find is that there was somewhere in the realm of 4 to 10% increase in expenditures just during this pandemic. And of course, when you're talking about percentages, it's hard to really get a grip on exactly what that means. But the medical community was overwhelmed, even with that just 4 to 10%, because they were having a very difficult time just keeping up with the expenditures from the medical problems that are still leading as far as heart attacks and strokes and cancer and things of that nature. It's very difficult for them to keep up with that. And so when you add on 30 plus million cases here in the United States and then hundreds of millions of cases around the world, that has a tendency to put a little more pressure on the system that wasn't prepared before.
Okay. What, if you know this, what has been the estimated cost of PPE equipment?
Yes, well, in the United States alone, it was estimated around $7 billion. And
Wow.
In the global market, I couldn't find any information to give me even an estimate. But $7 billion just for this country, that's quite a bit of money. And we're just talking about mostly expenditures for hospitals and urgent care centers and doctors' offices and things of that nature. And so it was difficult to monitor what happened after they came from the manufacturers, because a lot of times there were backups in being able to deliver. There were companies that were offered an ability to be part of the process and then removed because they couldn't do it fast enough. So there's a lot of confusing information out there. But I think when you take in consideration of how many people, general people, were looking for places to buy masks and to do other things to protect themselves, that $7 billion may be a really small number when we're looking at things globally.
Right. Now, speaking of $7 billion being a small number, recent information has come out, or has at least been reported by a few other media outlets, that the vaccine may potentially be a yearly thing, with these companies profiting from the vaccines that have already been released and given to many Americans. what is the potential of the earnings or the profit for each of these companies in the next 5, 10 years?
Yeah, so I think that's interesting, a very interesting question, because there's still not any conclusive evidence yet for any of these companies to make a firm statement. Some are saying that they'll need to be a booster every 3 months. Some are saying a yearly shot like the flu shot. There still is no conclusive information on which of those will happen. And so, my understanding of the stock market, a lot of times things change when there's a volatile change in society. Sometimes there's a change when there's a particular CEO or a person that has influence on the finances of this country say something, this or that, and the stock market will move. So, of course, because of this vaccine craze and because of the number of vaccines that were trying to be produced and the number of people that were attempting to be vaccinated, that was going to be something that was going to make a change in these companies' bottom line. But long term, I think those situations will probably flatten out. So it probably won't be as much of a deal when it comes to the stock market. But in general, if we are looking at worldwide, as many millions of vials of vaccines have been taken around the world, then we're really talking about something that's going to maintain good finances for these companies years into the future, unless the right type of information gets out and the truth about what is happening with these vaccines around the country and around the world is happening, and people's confidence in them will decrease, such as the number of cases of what they call breakthrough infections, where people are getting vaccinated. If they're on a 2-shot vaccine, they've gotten both shots. If they're on a 1-shot vaccine, of course, they got that 1 shot. But we're literally seeing many people that were free of infection prior to a vaccine,
Right.
in whatever they were doing to take care of themselves. But then once they got the vaccine, they wound up getting the infection. And then many people, of course, are having the side effect problems or the adverse events from the vaccine after the 2nd shot or a couple of weeks after they get the single shot. And so if those type of honest answers are coming to the public, then I think that the concern for getting vaccinated will increase. The people that will lend themselves to getting vaccinated will go down. And if that is true, if that happens, then these companies might see a severe downturn in their profits.
Hmm. Now, if you look on social media these days, you will see, of course, many people for the vaccine and many people against the vaccine. One of the things that I've noticed personally is that those against the vaccine have mentioned that everything is COVID. You mentioned a little earlier that heart failures and some other ailments that we're used to hearing about, for example, are not heard about much these days. Has COVID just completely taken over everything, or is there really a decline in things such as heart disease, which would have been the #1 killer for the past at least 10 years, or the flu virus, or cancer, some of the more common things that we've seen? Have those numbers declined, or are we just calling everything COVID?
Well, I would say that when it comes to the flu, that's the only thing statistically that has proven had lower numbers than previous years. But when it comes to heart disease and cancer deaths and cancer diagnoses and heart strokes and people becoming, having to wind up on dialysis, none of these numbers have decreased at all. And so when it comes down to it, we're just paying so much attention to COVID, and the influence of the media on our minds has been directed to COVID, but the numbers of these other medical problems have not decreased. Now, there were some concerns, especially amongst healthcare practitioners, that there were a lot of death certificates,
Yes.
that would have COVID on it when these people died from other medical problems. So I think there may have been some influence, and it could have been on purpose. It could have been confusion. But at the end of the day, actual numbers of people that have died from heart attacks, still the number one killer in the United States and the world. And when we're talking about cancer, strokes, and other medical problems that were leading before COVID, those things are still a major problem and still are in higher numbers than the COVID cases, especially now that there has been somewhat of a downturn over the last month or so.
Okay, wow. Okay. And finally, very quickly, before you go, Dr. Akili, what are your thoughts on this? How do you think individuals, just the general everyday American, how do you think individuals have fared during this pandemic economically?
Well, I would say based on the statistics, it's general and typical for any time there's any type of a problem in this country and even around the world. The young have the highest unemployment rates. Black and brown people have the highest unemployment rates. People that are on jobs where you're college educated have had less unemployment versus those that are, let's say, maybe not high school graduates, or they do have a high school graduate. Those people have lost most of the jobs. And so I think one of the things that I have heard many, many times in my lifetime is that the poor suffer the most in hard times. Yeah. And even when there are unoptimal situations like during this pandemic, the rich got richer. I mean, when we look at the financial improvements of certain companies and certain people, billionaires in particular, many of them have had a skyrocket in their profits, a skyrocket in how much money they make per year during a pandemic when many people are struggling to even find something to eat. And so in America specifically, this has been a problem as long as probably most of us have been alive, and it continues today. Same situation, the poor get poorer. The darker people are usually wind up in the worst situation. And typically those that are rich continue to get richer and continue to enjoy whatever they have, the benefits that they have, without sharing with those that are less fortunate.
That's right. Thank you, Dr. Akili, as always, for your insight. We look forward to speaking with you again next week.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Let's pause for announcements from our sponsors. After the break, Thomas X will be joining us to discuss the anniversary of the murder of George Floyd and its impact on America. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Worldwide, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Download the Final Call Radio app and take us everywhere. On your phone, on your computer, on your tablet, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also log on to finalcall.com and click the Listen Live button, or finalcallradio.com. Final Call Radio, the official voice of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam.
Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel at National Network View. I am Anissa Muhammad with NNVnews.com.